Oh boy, dude, this is a deck I got to Legend with, and I am ready to tell you all about it. Don't worry. For all of you who don't know about these guides work with the first step being describing an overview of the deck, the next step being describing things you can do to make the deck better or more budget. But in this case, I'm going to skip over that one because this is a pretty just standard build. You can't really take out Baku or anything. And then the third one is specific matchups. So without further ado, we'll just jump into the overview. The overview of the deck is basically you just go face. It is a very aggressive deck that revolves around being aggressive but not filling the board too much as to get wiped. You have a Giggling Inventor to rebuild the board or protect you if you're against a deck that's aggroing you back and you're not able to fully control the board. And the weapon is like the only tool you'll use to control the board, ideally. And even then, you'll want to use it to go face. But if you need to, use your face to kill minions so you can keep board pressure and keep going face, for the most part. Obviously, sometimes you'll have to do things like trade minions into it, but you have the Vile Spine Slayer, you have the weapon, you have Cold Blood, Deadly Poison, and Cold Blood on little minions to trade into things. And you have ways of cheesing out big minions, like turn 3, Hench Clan Thug, make it a 4/4 turn 3. Turn 4, Argent Squire and Blood Knight, you get a 1/1 and a 6/6 on turn 4. The Void Ripper can easily flip health and make a minion that's low on health all of a sudden like high on health and just become a trading tool. Like if you have a 6/6 and it becomes a 6/1, say almost kills or a 6/2, basically you could flip the health and just have it become a trading bot. You just trade it into some small minions. That way you don't have to necessarily do it with your face, and it fulfills that role. Or you just keep going face with it. This deck is unique in the fact that it only runs one Fungal Mancer, the fact that it only runs one Void Ripper, the fact that it has a couple of techs in here that I think are pretty useful, the fact that it uses 2 Giggling Inventors, and the fact that you don't have Myra's Unstable Element, although I will get into that in a second. No Myra's, no problem. This deck easily got me to Legend with a 56% win rate, and as I said, there's nothing really you can do to change the deck other than maybe put in Myra's. If you take out the Chief Inspector, which I teched in for the Secret Hunter matchup and Spell Hunter matchup, there's nothing really else that you need to change. Maybe put another Fungal Mancer for a Giggling Inventor if you feel like it, but keeping one Void Ripper has actually been very good in my opinion. 1 Blink Fox is helpful, you can steal a card from them. 2 Blood Knights is helpful because of the consistency of the Giggling Inventor, and other than that, rest of it should actually stay the same. I would not really recommend taking out anything. So without further ado, we'll just jump right into the matchups. The Druid matchup. Basically, what this matchup is, you'd assume that it would be in the Druid's favor because of all the armor, but no, this aggro deck, if you can get out a 1/1 Divine Shield, if he Wild Growths that next turn, and you're able to put a Cold Blood on your 1/1 and make it a 5/1 Divine Shield, if he doesn't have Naturalize, that's almost 15 to 20 damage coming in about 3 turns that he has no response to, other than hitting it with his face, or hitting it with his face once and then spell stoning. So he still has to use a card and take a ton of damage to do it. It's just a very, very aggressive, powerful play that takes over the game early. And you can really run away with the game off of that alone. Like that free 10-ish damage on average, maybe 15 if you're lucky. Incredible. There's nothing he can do. Especially if he decides to not hit it in Wild Growth. And if he decides to do that, he takes more damage. If he decides to hit your thing, that's 1 turn he's not Wild Growthing, so he can't, he doesn't have 4 mana to swipe, so you can actually play more minions on the board that very next turn anyway. It's really just an amazing play. You don't necessarily want to do it on a Firefly or a Dire Mole necessarily, because he can kill that a little more easily with like a Wrath or a Spellstone, depending on how much armor he's gained, but it's actually still okay on a Dire Mole, because he has to have a Wrath to deal with it. So ideally it's Argent Squire that it's played on, but it can also be played on the Dire Mole and still be pretty decent. Just on the Firefly, it could be useful, and if you really think you need to, it can be good. But if it gets Spellstone, don't be upset. Hunter. This matchup started off at about, I think, 8-16 for a while. Now it's 14-18. I went 6-2 after I teched in the Chief Inspector, because if you can kill their secrets as soon as they put them out, or right after they put them out, or bait them into using more, that is so effective. It's like they've wasted like entire turns in order, like, sure, they're doing that to increase their spell stone, which is still useful, but you kill their secrets, which is a major thing that would hold you back. So the fact that you're able to get past that could be so essential. Like, it can be so useful. And if you're playing against Death Rattle, same thing applies as the Druid. And to most control matchups, if you realize, like, if you assume that it's Death Rattle. Like, if they tracking turn 1, I usually try to commit to the go super hard in the face strategy. If they play Candle Shot, you know it's Death Rattle, and I don't know. If they have Candle Shot and it's Death Rattle, don't do it. But if they don't play Death Rattle, or if they don't play Candle Shot turn 1 into a Hunter, generally I would commit to the Cold Blood play. Because the only secret that would wreck you in that case is a Freeze Trap, and they only run 1 in the Secret Hunter deck. Spell Hunter is less popular, although they do run 2. And Death Rattle Hunter will have no response other than a Candle Shot. And if they have a Candle Shot, I already said don't play the card. So, honestly, this matchup, once I learned how to play it, and now that I'm describing to you, like, being aggressive, sometimes killing the egg if you think that it might be necessary. Like, if he coins out the egg, assume that he has a 3/3 that procs Death Rattle. So you're going to kill it because he's going to get a 5/5 anyway. And then once you do that, he plays a 3/3, doesn't get a 5/5, doesn't keep the Death Rattle egg out, and then you can trade into the 5/5 on your own accord, using Cold Blood, taking some damage to the face to maintain board control, and the last thing against Death Rattle is kill the Grizzly if you can. Because if he cubes and then play deads on it, it's an unstoppable wall that you can't get through. So Hunter has a lot of ways of actually being very annoying and making it difficult for you to win. So this is definitely a Hunter favored matchup. But hopefully some of the tips that I gave you being go super aggressive, kill the egg if he coins into it, especially if he coins into it, and try to kill the Grizzly if you can as soon as possible. Those are the 3 biggest tips that I can give you. Also, if he beats you with like a Explosive Trap or a Rexar, don't be upset. It happens to everyone. This deck is not favored for you. Next one is Mage. This deck destroys Tempo Mage. And also beats Big Mage because you can go fast, similar to Druid, and then the Mage will have to ping it twice, which means it loses 2 turns in order to kill that minion. Into Tempo, you don't want to commit to that 5/1 play because he could have Arcane Missiles or Cinderstorm, which just pings 1 damage multiple times, so it can get through the Divine Shield and kill your guy. So in that case, use Cold Blood for burst or value trades on a Divine Shield minion or a minion with more health. But honestly, it's not that big of a deal. You have the weapon trade in, you'll stay at a high enough health. Like once you get down to like 15 health, start worrying. Don't necessarily trade with your face anymore. Start trading with minions. You have a Giggling Inventor to stop his minion advance. You have just very mana efficient minions that can take over the board that you can trade into his board in order to minimize the damages, you know? Like if he plays a 4/3 spell damage, plus 2 spell damage, you'll have multiple minions on the board to deal with it at that point, and you'll just trade a couple into it because you know you're going to take a ton of face damage from spells, or you were just frozen by a Frostbolt. Like, despite the fact that he controls you and burns you, you still will almost always have a better board than him, unless he has like double Shooting Star, in which case that's unfortunate, and one of them will have to have been buffed. Most of the cases, you'll just win. And when he Luniths on turn 6, it's basically just a free turn for you to set up minions and go face, because he has very limited board wipe. So honestly, matchup is very favored for you. As for Big, you just go full on face, hope he does not have the Dragon's Fury, and you just basically try to take over the game as soon as possible. I had someone concede on turn 2, if you saw that video yesterday. That was very nice. The fact that I knew, I guessed that he might be a control mage, and I played a 5/1 on turn 1 because I coined into it. I hit him once, and then he conceded because he had no response to it. He was going to take minimum 10 damage by turn 3, and I was going to have minions out. So beats Big Mage a little bit too, although I would say that is a closer matchup than Tempo Mage. Next is Odd Paladin, or Paladin in general. Excuse me, and sorry for hitting my mic. This one's a little bit more difficult for you because he gets a wide board and you can't necessarily value trade every single time. Obviously, sometimes you can, especially if you get out like a dire mole and a firefly or something. You can value trade to protect your bigger minions. Then if you get a giggling inventor, you also can protect your minions that way. So it's definitely doable, which is why this matchup is 4-3. But I also think that it's a bad matchup for you, and the only reason why this matchup seems positive is because I played against some mech paladins and an even paladin, which this deck does better into because, again, if you get out a really good early tempo play, slower or control decks won't have any response. And into mech, if you get a Vilespine Slayer and kill their buffed up mech, they just lose, and there's nothing they can do about it, and then they concede. So, I don't know. This matchup is not great if it's Odd Paladin, which is the most popular deck, but into the less popular Paladin decks, I think it's pretty good. Priest is 2-2. Not much I can say about this deck, other than hope you don't get board wiped by Duskbreaker. Go face as hard as you can. And that's pretty much it, to be honest. It's always hard to talk about Priest because there are multiple different matchups, and it's always the one I play the least, so I have the least experience into it with pretty much any deck, so I apologize, but just play a normal aggro deck as if you're playing Druid or Mage or anything like that. Rogue, I beat Rogue because it's basically 50-50 against Odd, but this deck does beat Quest because you're able to burst them down before they're able to get anything off, really. Basically, if you get out of 5-1 really early, or you're able to get the Thug out or a Fledgling and get that to pop off before they hit turn 5 and can Giggling, unless they have a perfect hand with like 2 Shadow Steps on a Frozen Elemental, Frost Elemental. No, Frozen Shard, Glacial Shard. There we go, that's it, final answer, Glacial Shard. Unless he does that and freezes your entire board like 2 times, so you can't do anything, you'll probably actually end up on top. Because it's unlikely that they have that perfect hand, and if it takes them even one more turn than having like to get the quest off than it would if they had a perfect hand, that one extra turn can mean a lot. So honestly, Rogue's not bad because you have a 50-50 matchup and then a favorable matchup, and then this deck beats Miracle Rogue too, just because Miracle Rogue is a bit too slow. Next one is Shaman. This deck is not great against Shaman. It's a losing matchup for a couple of reasons. The main one being into Even Shaman, as I've said multiple times, especially in my Even Shaman guide, Even Shaman's built to control the board with its minions, and then get out big minions and cheese you and ping your minions. So if he has an Even Shaman, and then he plays the eel to kill your 1-drop, your like I don't know, Firefly, or get rid of the Divine Shield, and then starts controlling the board like from the get-go, you're probably not going to win. It's just that simple. Sometimes you just can't win. Obviously, if they don't get like a really good curve, and you use your dagger to kill the Knife Juggler turn 2, and they don't have the eel, you can maybe win the game, but for the most part, they have enough ping and a wide enough board to deal with your minions, and then they take over the game, especially if they get a Serenite Chain Gang down, so not ideal. Shudderwalk is a little bit better if you can rush them down, but if they get to like turn 5 and can Volcano, or have like multiple removals, say they have like 2 Lightning Storms and a Volcano, nothing you can do about that, but if they have that, you're just going to lose the matchup. It doesn't matter. Because the only reason why this matchup is worse than the other control matchups is because even though they have Overload, they can get to the board wipes before other decks can. So I feel like the Shudderwalk matchup is also not great for you, but still okay if they don't have the options. So this one is a losing matchup for you in pretty much every case in every deck, but is still winnable, because even Shaman, you could definitely value trade and have your dagger trade into multiple minions. The totems, easily kill them with your dagger, or kill like 2 held minions, it's fine. Next one is Warlock. This deck beats even Warlock because you can rush them down, and you have Assassinate to kill some big minions, or the Vilespine Slayer to kill big minions in front, especially if they're taunt. And to Zoo, you trade with your weapon, and you trade with your massive amount of very mana-efficient minions. And unless he gets Prince Caliseth turn 2, you're probably going to win into Zoolock. And even if he does get that, you actually win sometimes, because even the minions that he buffs become like 3/2 minions. At least the Kobold, the Librarian, and the Voodoo Doctor. You can still actually kill those. Or you can use your 1-attack minions and then your weapon to kill like a Flame Imp, or things that have like 3 health. So honestly, it's not even that bad of a matchup, even if he gets Caliseth. But obviously, if he gets Caliseth, the amount of tempo that he can gain from that, especially if he gets out a Serenite Chain Gang on turn 4 and makes 2 3/4s, can definitely take over the game. But unless he gets that, or into even Shaman, even Warlock, unless he has like Defile and do Hellfire like all in his hand right away, you're probably going to win. Especially considering he does damage to himself. It's much easier to burst him down. What you want to do, I guess, against even Warlock is if you can stop at 18 health on one turn and then set up for a ton of burst. That way he can't life tap play a 4/4. You can set up and then do a ton of damage, get him down to like 6 rather than say like 13, and then he plays a giant taunt. You get him down to 6. That way, if you cheese the way to get rid of his taunt by assassinating it or have Leroy in hand, you can actually close out the game. Warlock is definitely a favorite matchup for you, and you'll definitely feel why. You can either trade in the minions with your dagger against Zoo, or burst him and do a ton of quick damage against even. And since he does damage to himself, that actually helps you out quite a bit. Into Warrior, he gains too much armor and controls the board too well for you to actually do anything. I'm surprised that this deck is 2 and 3. I would have expected it to be 1 and 4, but I guess I played well and was able to beat it. But for the most part, just hope he doesn't have Super Collider or Brawl or Reckless Fury, and don't overcommit to the board, because if you do, he'll definitely kill your stuff. That's all I have to say about that matchup. Hope you guys enjoyed. I enjoyed this deck quite a bit. Actually, it is a little bit simple, I will admit, but I got to Legend with it again, so it's another deck that I hold a little bit dear to my heart, along with Dragon Priest and Spell Hunter. It's now in that list of decks I've gotten to Legend with, so I feel like I have a level of expertise with this deck that not everybody can say that they have. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys found this at least in-depth enough for you guys to understand how to play this deck better. And if you have any more questions, feel free to ask. I enjoy making this video. I enjoy helping you guys. And if I can help you guys further, that would make me happy, to be honest. So yeah, later.